So, yeah, the pan on the plane blows off midair. We'll get to that more in a little bit, too.
One of the planes just lost a wheel.
It's a plane. You don't need wheels. It's not a car.
Yeah, there's a bunch of various breakdowns all over the place. A ton of fires, fuel leaks, malfunctioning motors, random debris. They keep finding random shit in fuel tanks, which I feel like is not a place where you want to find random shit.
No, you really don't.
In the midst of all of this, the company has lost billions of shareholder value. At least there was one weekend where they lost a quarter of their value, which is quite significant.
Yeah.
And now, like we said, they've got the dead whistleblower. It's really just a shit show over there.
It's to put an even finer point on this. On the same day that John Barnett was found dead in his car, a Boeing plane I believe it was flying out to New Zealand, suddenly lost altitude, started dropping, very reminiscent of some of the other notable Boeing crashes, and started just diving. 50 people got injured, and it was so bad that it started diving such speeds and it so sharply that people flew up and hit the ceiling, knocking off plastic panels from the fucking ceiling.
Oh my God.
This
scares the shit out of me. I'm going to just keep thinking about this when I'm flying.
For me, it's tough too because obviously you guys have seen me when I get on a plane, I immediately take my pants to my knees, not in a sexual way, and put my coat over me to get some airflow going. And I'm afraid that if something like this happened, my freaky thing would be out all over the flight.
Yeah, and on someone's video.
Which of course I could sue them for revenge porn, but I don't. I'm not a litigious guy.
Okay, so most of the big blockbuster issues for Boeing stem from the 737 MAX, which we were talking about. Mm-hmm. That was a plane that was allowed to resume flying just 3 years ago after 2 fatal crashes.
Yeah.
Since then, airlines have filed over 1,800 regulatory complaints about safety issues with the MAX, or what amounts to over 1 per day for the past 3 years. So they allowed it back up in the air 3 years ago, and every single day since then, there's been an official complaint.
Jesus Christ.
Which is not good. Now, I don't know a lot about planes. I'm just going to put that right at the top.
Yeah.
And I will say this, however, and you don't know this about me, but it's true. I spent a lot of my childhood on a flight simulator.
You did?
I am the granddaughter of not one but 2 pilots. And
that's true.
Both of them loved the old simulator and did not know what to do with the granddaughter.
Yeah. Well.
So onto the computer it was.
Did they do the flight simulator?
Yeah.
Wow. And they're watching you do it, and they're like, "This is not gonna."
No, they helped me with it.
They helped you with it.
Yeah, especially one of my grandfathers. Yeah, he would sit there and teach me how to fly on the simulator.
Wow.
Microsoft or something different?
It was, it was definitely Microsoft, but I also think that maybe it was a proprietary program. He was teaching at one of the local colleges. Also, he was teaching flying, and others, maybe some engineering stuff. I don't really know. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, so I was on there a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. So I know a little bit. So I'm going to try and explain this the best I can.
Yeah, I know nothing.
But I will say this. The 2 major problems with the MAX seem to be engineering and manufacturing.
Okay, I know that.
So 2 things you don't want to be wrong with the plane. This is what they tried to do. So the 737, obviously, not the MAX, but the 737, 800, let's say, this was a plane that existed for Boeing for a long time.
It's the classic.
That's the classic, yeah. The 747 and 737, yeah. So they decided, they're like, we're going to upgrade the 737. And if you want to, make a more efficient plane, you want to have a bigger engine, right? Classic. Bigger engine, more efficient. Fuel use, go faster, more efficient.
Maybe I do understand how mechanical things work because that is something
it's a classic
thing. Let's put a bigger engine on it, goes faster.
Bigger engine. So having a Gigantor engine in the 737 meant that it would actually take up more space within the body of the plane.
Yeah.
Which they didn't want to change. Which I'll get into in a little bit. They didn't want to change the actual body of the aircraft, but they wanted to cram this Gigantor engine in it to make it more efficient. So what it did is that the engine tip kind of extends out past the wing a little bit, right?
Okay, yeah.
This causes the nose of the plane to pitch upwards. And I'm going to explain why. This gets into kind of a principle of aerodynamics called the angle of attack. Mm-hmm. Now, you put your hand outside a window, right?
Yeah.
You've done that before. Not like Hitler. No.
I'm not doing that,
You were
Liz.
doing that.
I'm not fucking doing that. You're doing that.
No,
Put my hand outside the window. Yes. So
Like
I
this.
see a beautiful
No,
lady.
like you're doing it like a tree.
Okay, I'm
Right?
doing
You're
it
doing the
outside of a window.
goalposts like in the football game.
I'm doing it. Yeah.
But you're putting your hand out of the window, right? You
Oh,
have it
out
up.
of the window, yeah.
Out the window. And you're feeling the air on your hand, right?
Yeah.
Now let's say actually you're putting it out this way.
Okay.
Palm facing down.
Palm facing down.
The wind is going over your hand. You can feel it, right?
Yeah.
But it's causing your hand to kind of pitch up.
Yeah.
Right? Up until it keeps going, and it keeps pushing it even further up until a single point, and then it stalls out and your hand falls back down.
Yeah.
Right? I think we've all kind of experienced that with our
The
hand out the
buoyancy
window.
of air.
No? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It pitches up, and then that's basically how it works with planes too, right? You have the angle of attack is kind of the angle between the wing and the wind. The wind blows over the wing. And basically, if you lift the nose of the plane, right, the angle of attack is going to increase, right?
Okay.
As the plane lifts up, the angle increases a bit, and that in turn lifts the angle of the wing.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay. I think I understand.
So the plane's going up, the wing is going up that
Yeah.
way. Now, pitch changes are fine when you're controlling the plane because the pilot knows how it's pitching. But a pitch change with an increasing angle of attack is different because they're not controlling that, right? So it's all well and good until, again, it pitches up so much that, again, like your hand, it reaches that one point and it stalls out.
Your plane's flying straight up, and then it stalls and then goes down.
Exactly. That's called the stall limit angle of attack. And that's just like a principle of aerodynamics. That is like not something you can like change, but it's when the wing stops lifting entirely. And I mean, kind of the wind flow basically separates off the wing. That's how it
What
works.
I know about stalling is from like a Nintendo 64 game I used to play that I don't remember the name of or really anything about. I just remember that if you tried to go up too quickly, it would say like stalling, 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 and you couldn't do it.
Yeah. Because of the pitching. Yeah.
Because the pitching.
Yeah. So, I mean, all this to say is that like the relative pitch up of the nose can be extremely unstable because you're constantly risking that kind of fatal stall situation.
Gotcha.
Right? Okay. So Boeing was like, we put this gigantic engine in the 737 MAX, and now it's causing the nose to kind of pitch up because the engine's pushing up on the wing a little bit. What do we do? Because we don't want to break open the plane and build a new plane. So we are actually just going to install a software override.
Like they're going to have like a little guy in there that's going to fix it for you.
Yes, we're just going to install a software program to basically fix the problem of our own engineering. And the computer system then was meant to push the nose back down when it senses from one sensor that the plane might start exceeding the angle of attack limits. Okay, so the nose is pitching up. There's a little sensor on the plane, and it's like ding, 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 and it overrides not just the pilot but also the co-pilot, and pushes the plane back down.
Okay, so it like swats it down because it's going up too fast.
Yes. Now, so they install this override system in the 737 MAX, but they don't really tell anybody.
No, it's actually not. I mean, the big. So the 737 MAX, from what I understand, I'm not an expert on this stuff. From what I understand, was essentially a response to like a new product out by Airbus, which is again like their only real competitor. And Boeing, because of some reasons,
A310, I think.
Yeah, some fucking plane. But the Boeing, not as agile maybe as it once was kind of taken by surprise at this and was like, we gotta come up with a new thing. And this was their answer to that.
Which wasn't a new thing. It was just the 737.
Yeah, but with bigger engines. Yeah, and with other stuff in it. And one of the things that they wanted to get this thing out there as soon as possible without having the pilots go through flight simulator training, because that was costly. It would be, there would be less adoption by, like maybe less sales. And so stuff like MCAS, they didn't exactly like advertise or tell anyone about or put in the manual.
Yeah, and it wasn't just because they wanted to like rush it to market. It was because if they did, and if pilots were aware that there was this new sort of override system and there was a new sort of a new thing to learn and to manage, they would have to maybe report that this plane was a little bit different, maybe even significantly different than the 737.
Yeah.
And if the plane, the 737 MAX, was that significantly more different, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Than a previous 737, then it would mean that the FAA would need to recertify the plane.
Yeah.
Which would take years.
Yes.
And would be very costly to Boeing.
And so in the interest of getting this out the door as quickly as possible, they're like, well, this is benign software is simply something to keep our brave pilots, our Sully Sullenbergers, safe.
Yes.
And so they didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, and if you guys are thinking like, damn, that sounds extremely fucking stupid and potentially even criminal, you would be correct, but Boeing doesn't really admit any of that until after 2 fatal crashes.
So the first of those crashes, and these are very famous crashes, so bear with me if you know about this, because there's a high likelihood that you do. But of the few of you
it's all building up to what's going on now. We got to go through it.
Many baby listeners who were just simply fell off their turnip truck yesterday. This is for you. The first of these crashes was Lion Air off the coast of Indonesia in late 2018. This killed all 189 people on board, including famous country singer Townes Van Zandt. So the response to this one was insane. I think Boeing probably had a decent idea of maybe what went on here. And there's a lot of, you can read between the lines on a lot of the contemporary reporting at the time, because I think even a lot of reporters were a little skeptical about Boeing's and Lion Air, but via Boeing's like very aggressive and muscular response to this. So there's a 2019 article from the New York Times entitled "Lion Air Crash Families Say They Were Pressured to Sign No Suit Deal." Mm-hmm. This details how the company the Lion Air was enmeshed in the regulatory state of Indonesia, much like Boeing is kind of enmeshed in the regulatory state of America, or the apparatus of America. And that Lion Air routinely kind of paid off officials and any sort of bodies that would regulate them in any sort of way with just giant plastic bags full of cash. In that article, it also talks about how they were able to assemble this kind of crisis center right after the crash and fly as many of the family members of the people who were killed in the crash to that crisis center and pay them off with bags of $92,000. Not actual bags, but they were essentially having
Could have been.
They were essentially having people sign these pledges to not sue not only Lion Air, but any of I think it was something around 400 related companies, like people who would manufacture the airplane, whatever. Like this essentially this agreement to not sue, especially Boeing, for $92,000.
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday, and I was saying, oh my God, it reminds me so much of that bullshit that Liz Warren was doing for, I can't even remember which company, Dow Chemical, I think it was. She was working when she was, being flown to Africa to have, heart-to-hearts with some of the women who had suffered complications from breast implants, and she tried to, pass it off as, doing some good. I don't know. She kind of tried to do a woke spin on it, because it was Africa. So I guess she just tried to build off of that or something. But yeah, it's just fucking sending a bunch of fucking lawyers to get you sign away rights and give you hush money. Classic. I mean, this is, and to kind of zoom out a little bit, this is these Boeing, which is the sort of implication in a lot of contemporary reporting and reporting since, is that Boeing was putting Lion Air up to this, that they're flying all these families out in the midst of their sudden shock grief to be like, you're not going to sue anybody. You're not going to sue anybody. Here's $92,000. Which Indonesia goes a long way. The other thing is that Boeing was sort of blaming these third world pilots on they're not so trained, they're not so safe, this kind of thing wouldn't happen in America. Mm-hmm. But it comes out that MCAS was the reason for this crash. Yeah, the same thing happened with the second crash, the Ethiopian Airlines flight. That killed 157 people. Just months later in March 2019, and 1 month before John Barnett gets quoted in the New York Times about problems at Boeing's manufacturing facilities. But that flight, is funny because the Ethiopian government comes out and maintains and says this is like a quote from the report. They say it was repetitive and uncommanded airplane nose down inputs, which put the airplane in an unrecoverable drive. So essentially, that software program, that override, was pushing it down as the pilots were trying to pull it up, and they couldn't.
Yeah, so I mean, at this point too, like it was known. I mean, this is kind of part of the big scandal that happened with Boeing. It's like it was known that MCAS was probably the reason for was the reason for the Indonesian crash.
Yeah.
And so there'd been like this like rush, like explanation from Boeing reps to like pilots around the world, people who were piloting this thing, like, oh, there's these measures you can take if it starts doing this. And it later comes out that these guys, the pilots on this Ethiopian Airlines flight, had done those measures.
Ugh.
And the plane still took them down. Because it's just, if one sensor is faulty, that means the plane is taking itself into a nosedive, which is fucking insane.
Yeah, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, which I think everyone kind of knows is pretty, I guess you would say, in bed with Boeing, like a lot of other regulatory bodies that we're going to talk about today, they disagreed vehemently with the Ethiopian government, and I believe they joined the French. The way that these things get done internationally is a little complicated.
Yeah.
But they came out along with the French and said, no, it wasn't the software, it was the pilots, and also it was a bird strike.
Yeah.
I don't know if I buy that.